Hello and thanks for staying with us on your channel of choice, Africa Independent Television AIT. This is The Signature Show. I am Nwabueze Njoko, and in this edition of the program, is Governor Godwin Obaseki of Edo State being mischievous, or is he being misunderstood? Nigerian governors speaking from both sides of the mouth will support independence of the legislature and the judiciary, but we want to consult with the federal government on Executive Order 10 or 2020. The phenomenon called Samuel Ortom, the Benue State governor, escapes assassination attempt while in his farm. Fulani National Movement says they shot the gun at the sheriff. But 3 weeks after, Ortom says government officials are involved in the lucrative business of kidnapping. Plus, our special report and interview. You can't blink even an eye for a second. Please stay with us. Now, 2 weeks ago, Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki raised the alarm that Nigeria's economy could be heading to the rocks because the nation is broke. He pointed to the March federal allocation to the states, which had to be done from over 60 billion naira supplementary funds printed and shared to the states by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed faulted the governor as lying to Nigerians because the money shared was indeed earned by federal revenue agencies. But just last week, in explaining the true situation, the central bank actually succeeded in making out the finance minister either as the official not telling all the truth or indeed incompetent to understand and plead the facts. The central bank governor Godwin Emefiele told reporters that the Apex Bank indeed printed said 60 billion naira, but that it was not as if the bank simply printed from its factory and shared currency notes to the public. Every state will pay the full facility because it is a loan. Now, some people have accused Governor Obaseki of stoking fear where none exists, but the governor last week took up the gauntlet. He advised that Nigeria must stop playing the economic ostrich, warning that the nation's domestic debt could hit 16 trillion naira by the end of April. Now, why is Obaseki upset? Now, look at this. Buhari, during his 2015 campaign, queried the number of aircraft in the presidential fleet, draining resources from a hungry nation. Today, the fleet has increased. Nigerian federal legislators have virtually emptied Japanese car manufacturing lines of all choice cars in order to make laws that divide us more. The convoys of state governors now compete with train wagons moving from Lagos to Kano, and all are maintained at public cost. Political appointees are today more than elected representatives of the people at every level. And at every level of governance in Nigeria, recurrent expenditure takes over 80% of our budgets. With dwindling resources, how can Nigeria carry on as if nothing has gone wrong and just print money to give a semblance of all is well? That is Obaseki's worry. Is this contestable? Now, as if to prove that Governor Obaseki knows what he's saying about how Nigeria is broke, the Nigerian Governors Forum last week went on its knees to beg judiciary officers who are on strike to return to the courts while they make efforts to resolve the financial issues that warranted their going on strike in the first instance. But should the governors be involved in the judiciary workers' strike at all? Look, the Nigerian Constitution provides for financial autonomy for both the legislature and the judiciary. But over the years, Nigerian governors, in a criminal and impeachable disregard for the Constitution, have cornered all monies meant for these arms of government and dispense as it pleases them any amounts they feel like. Now, when President Muhammadu Buhari issued Executive Order 10 of 2020, compelling the governors to get their hands off funds appropriated for these two arms of government, the governors conspired and arm-twisted the president into suspending the order. And now the governors say they are not opposed to the independence of the legislature, which they have made lame, very lame and fearful, and the judiciary would have turned into their lapdogs, all by holding on to their own funds. These governors can only convince themselves, but let them know that when the list of those working against the rule of law and the Nigerian constitution is drawn, Nigerian governors will be second after the Buhari administration on the list. This is the Signature Show on AIT. We take our special report now, which is on the Owerri attacks as a sign of evil times. Please stay with us. Last Tuesday, gunmen attacked a police station in Ogun State. Before then, on Monday, gunmen had attacked the Yakur Divisional Police Station in Cross River State. Before that Monday attack, gunmen had also on Monday, March the 1st, attacked the Esenodem Divisional Police Station in Akwa Ibom State. On April the 5th, Nigerians woke up to two massive attacks on the Correctional Center in Owerri and the Imo State Police Headquarters also in Owerri.
But what happened is a very big shock. We can't say I'm surprised as such, because police is supposed to have the requisite intelligence. There should be CCTV cameras. There are areas of gathering information. Why should they be ambushed? It's so for you to invade the prison. The prison is a place that is highly sealed up. And after invading the prison, the police that is next door neighbor couldn't react and waited until they were invaded. It's very, very surprising and embarrassing. I think the Nigerian police force has to sit up. Apparently, there may have been obsolete equipment. I don't know, or it's surprising.
The Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodinma, had blamed the Owerri attacks on the indigenous peoples of Biafra IPOB, which immediately distanced itself from the violence and destruction. The governor subsequently pointed accusing fingers at the former governor of the state, Rochose Okorocha. The former governor has since denied any complicity in the attacks.
A group of hoodlums, of course sponsored by some non-politicians in Imo State, decided to destroy public infrastructure and government facilities. I have done some thorough investigation and I have a credible lead as to those who are sponsoring these activities of these hoodlums.
This is not the right time to begin to indict anybody or to begin to, portion heap of blames on anybody. Rather, this is the time for self-reflection. It is a time for us to begin to believe and understand that insecurity has become the greatest challenge facing this great country called Nigeria.
The reaction of the Imo State governor is typical of the reactions of Nigeria's political leadership, especially at the federal level, as terrorists and organized criminal interests visit violence on many parts of the country. The government has been quick to label groups as the culprits. For instance, as Boko Haram escalated its attacks on Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa states, President Muhammadu Buhari first fingered elements from Libya, then disgruntled politicians, and then rogue elements from Boko Haram insurgents. However, any keen observer of Nigeria's insecurity challenge will notice that the nation is progressively but effectively being encircled by forces intent on destabilizing the Nigerian state. To think that Nigeria's escalating insecurity situation is simple rising incidents of crimes by lone wolves instead of planned and coordinated assault on the Nigerian state will amount to the judgment of a simpleton. From Borno, Yobe to Katsina states, Sokoto and Zamfara in the northern fringes to Kaduna in the northwest, and Niger, Plateau, Nasarawa, and Benue in the north-central, no section of northern Nigeria is safe today. Moving from Kaduna to Abuja, the nation's capital, is a risk which many Nigerians now avoid.
What is really happening in the country is a result of bad governance, failure in leadership. Over time, some of us have been lamenting about the kind of leaders we have in this country. We have people who don't think about the people they say they are leading. We have never had it this bad before. So if really we must make headway, first of all, must stop corruption. Where it's somebody who doesn't have maybe O level will go and forge O level and become a senator, and tomorrow he turns to be a billionaire. So we must stop corruption, give employment to the teeming masses, the youth population. That's the only way we can bring about security and make this country to work again.
In the southern part of the country, only Lagos and to a lesser degree Oyo State seem to have been spared the horror of mindless attacks and killings. The recent attacks on the correctional facility, the headquarters of Nigeria Police in Imo State, and then the police divisional station in Yakro, Cross River State, seem to have completed the encirclement of Nigeria by non-state actors.
To be the safest or the most safeguarded place in Imo State. Why? Because you have a police command there, headquarters. Because you have the former DSS office there. Because you have the Imo State government house there. Because you have the office of the deputy governor near there. You have the office of the first lady there. You have you have the residence of the commandant of the 34th Field Artillery Brigade Odins there. You have the residence of the commissioner of police there. Do you understand? And you ask yourself, what happened? Not even only that. You have up to more than 6 police tactical units, head units, located and situated around that vicinity. This hoodlum went there, carried out their operation without any counter-operation, without any resistance, without any challenge, without any attack. They had their field day, they went there and operated freely, and they left.
Today, rogue elements among the Fulani ethnic group are used to create an umbrella Fulani agenda to overrun the nation. Today, the non-violent activities of IPOB are used to create an Igbo agenda of disintegrating the nation. Today, the move by the southwest states to secure the region by the formation of Amateku is seen as a cunning design to pull out of the Nigerian enterprise. As groups in Nigeria bicker, as threats or reprisals against groups are issued, Nigeria's security situation worsens.
Sometimes most of these people you bring into big offices don't consider the national interest. They consider narrow-minded interest, and it affects the totality of the operations. So, well, to that extent, there's nothing wrong in community policing. State police. Because if you go to US, you have different levels of policing. You have county policing, you have metropolitan police, you have various, and the important thing is to keep the country warm. And they may let people sleep with their 2 eyes closed. Actually, after the NSAS or within the NSAS, the force has been intimidated. You see a lot of policemen now carrying their uniform in their bag, going to office. Sometimes on the road, you ask them whether they are policemen, they say no. So police needs to rejig. Police needs to be reinvigorated. The morale of the police force needs to be heightened, either from training or lecturing, or, in fact, the civil society organizations need to be reached out to join their voices in promoting the integrity of the Nigerian police force so that the society can be well guarded.
The overt attacks must be seen as what they are, not a simple Imo State security challenge, but a national threat. The formation of a Bubago, a unified security outfit to protect the Southeast, must also be seen as a mere palliative and not an enduring solution. The solution to Nigeria's security challenge lies in identifying who and what factors and interests are driving the situation. Secondly, Nigeria's security architecture is outmoded and can no longer rise to the current challenges. It is only commonsensical and a matter of national survival to redefine and retool that architecture, to leave it the way it is, and expect a result different from the present harvest of attacks, loss of lives in thousands, destruction of communities with attendant loss of trust among the people, will amount to self-destruct. It may yet be morning before evil times overtake the nation. It can be prevented. Now, about a month ago, Governor Samuel Ortom of Benue State stormed Aso Rock presidential villa. He had come to tell President Muhammadu Buhari of his ordeal. He narrowly escaped being killed right inside his own farm on the outskirts of Makurdi, the Benue State capital. Now, he later told journalists that he made some recommendations to the president on the security issue in his state. However, the Fulani National Movement, the very organization that gave Southerners an ultimatum to leave the north as if northern Nigeria is the land of the Fulanis, claimed responsibility for the attempt to kill Ortom. Last week, while speaking at an event organized by the Abuja chapter of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, Governor Ortom dropped a bombshell. Some government officials have their fingers in this spate of kidnapping going on in the country, he said. If Governor Ortom is right, then we must call Bashir Tofa, the NRC candidate in the 1993 presidential election, a prophet. Tofa had warned that Nigeria could be on the road to Rwanda, where warlords take charge. But first, who wanted Governor Ortom dead? Now, also 5 years ago, then retiring judge of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, Rose Viver, had dropped rock on glass. He said that some Supreme Court judgments do not make sense. The gun nozzle at Ortom and the issue that Justice Rose Viver raised are subjects of our conversation this Sunday. Please stay with us. Well, let me welcome you to the conversation segment of the Signature Show this Sunday. Penultimate Thursday, the retiring Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Rose Viver, through what some of us lame people, unlearned people, look at as a bombshell. Maybe we're wrong. Now, he did say at his valedictory session that some Supreme Court judgments, decisions, are senseless. And he gave his reason for that. He said, some of the precedences based on which those decisions are taken have become old. I'm not competent to discuss this matter because, as they say, I'm not learned. So I decided to invite somebody who's learned, a gentleman who's been a lawyer for at least 31 years, who is also, I do not know whether has come out frontally to jump into the political arena, but I also know that he's considering jumping right into the middle of the ring. He's also a businessman, but he's not here in his capacity as a businessman. He's here as a lawyer and a politician. Madaki, welcome to the conversation.
Always my pleasure.
Madaki, you see that I have admitted my own ill equipment to discuss, dissect, come to conclusions about the statement made by His Lordship Rose Viver about Supreme Court judgments, some of them not being sensible. And he said, based on precedent, judgments based on precedent, that some of those precedents have become outdated. Can precedents be outdated?
Yeah, thank you very much. You've actually raised a very sensitive issue. Extremely sensitive to the extent that the Supreme Court is the final court of the land. And, the only appeal that lies from the Supreme Court can only lie to God, And because we haven't seen the court of God set up, in human form, we don't know how, cases are done in the court of the Almighty. So nobody has ever contemplated appealing to God, after the losing the Supreme Court. So that's why it's actually so important, that the Supreme Court justices and the Supreme Court itself as an institution takes the business they do at the Supreme Court very seriously. Sadly, lately, we've been in a situation where the Supreme Court judgments, quite a number of them, especially the ones that are tainted with political undertones.
I'll come to those shortly.
Come, up with, judgments, decisions, conclusions that are extremely questionable. And I'm trying to choose my words very carefully because I've been a lawyer for 32 years now and counting. So it's part of my duty as a lawyer, as a senior lawyer for that matter, to not deliberately denigrate the judicial institution, because otherwise, it loses its aura and it loses its appeal, before right-thinking members of the society. And so, because of that, the Supreme Court owes it a duty to carry itself and address its job, with utmost candor, with utmost intellect, and with utmost responsibility, no matter what happens. Because if the Supreme Court gives you a judgment that does not accord with common sense, as we have seen in many recent judgments, then where else do you go? And, the danger in that also is that judges from, lower court judges are bound to follow established precedents laid down by the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court is supposed to know better, than them. But where those judgments are laughable and questionable very patently, where do they go? In fact, just to give you an example of the absurdity that this whole situation creates, I was in a court as a litigant in the FCTI court, sometime a year or two ago. And one of the judge who was presiding over the issue, the matter that took me there, was, in the course of hearing other cases, went into a conversation with the lawyers and the audience in court. And, the issue he was harping on was this issue of the confusion that's created, by conflicting judgments of the Supreme Court or conflicting judgments of the Court of Appeal, from different divisions. And he said something that I found extremely significant, that in the past, judgments from Nigeria's Supreme Court and appellate courts used to be cited with respect and dignity in courts in other jurisdictions, like the UK. You could cite a Supreme Court judgment from Nigeria and say, and urge a UK judge, to follow it because it's been established in the Supreme Court of Nigeria and all that. But he said that recent attempts to do that, have been scoffed at. The judges will simply tell you, come on, the Supreme Court of Nigeria, how? That the judgments are never consistent. So how can you come and cite? So we are beginning to lose that aura, not only in our local space, where, our courts are bound to follow, president, because the world has internationalized. Judgments are now seen to be more global than local. So if only the Supreme Court justices will see themselves as not just deciding the narrow confines of the cases before them, but that so many other multiplier effects flow from the judgments that they give, then they will take their jobs more seriously. But we haven't seen that, consistently. and rigorously lately.
Can political circumstance, economic circumstance, even civilization progression make a verdict by a Supreme Court right at one time and no longer right at another time? He said yes. And what he said to me is that, and he cited an example to me. He said, once in the life of United States, the Supreme Court held that the blacks and women did not have a right to vote. He also cited in South Africa, where the Supreme Court held that apartheid was not just a law applicable, but it was in fact something ordained by God. And the Supreme Court relied on the situation at that time to come to a judgment. But that if the case came up today, both in South Africa and in the United States, that the objective conditions have changed, and therefore the verdicts that precedent can no longer be cited. Now, why I'm going through this is because, is it likely that Nigeria's political situation, economic situation, social objective conditions could make one Supreme Court decision 30 years ago no longer relevant in fact today?
Well, thank you very much yet again. That's a very tricky and interesting question. But you see, we have to look at the circumstances. You know, the situation in these two examples that you just cited, you know, are extremely profound. You know about the history of slavery. You know about the deprivation that blacks have gone through in different parts of the world, including our own South Africa. You know, and you know that as at the time those judgments were given, you know, the governance at the time survived on the strength of white supremacy. So if white supremacy disappeared, then governance also disappeared. You know, and so it was important for institutional stability, you know, for those judgments, for those sort of pronouncements made obviously by racist judges to be made, because racism was the order of the day. And black Africans were seen as chattels who were actually owned, you know, by these people. So if they own you body and soul, you know, then who the hell do you think you are coming to aspire to govern? But of course, thankfully, things have changed. We've witnessed a black president in the United States in our own lifetime, you know, and a lot of blacks have held key positions and they've given them, you know, great accounts of themselves. But the difference in our own situation is that the judgments are not given on account of things that are rocket science or situations that are so completely perverse or outrageous that they are not within contemplation. But they are judgments that are clearly based on either inadequate analysis or, you know, contrived to achieve a particular mischievous, obviously mischievous end, you know, and are so patently perverse that, you know, as a self-respecting lecturer, you cannot stand in front of, you know, students who are seeking knowledge and beat your chest and say, yes, what the Supreme Court said makes sense. Because, you know, law is logic. Law is advanced logic. That's the truth. And if law is advanced logic, and the Supreme Court is supposed to be apex, you know, judicial institution, fails to apply logic, you know, in its aggravated sense, in order to come up with the ultimate objective of achieving justice, such that, you know, people leave the courtroom holding their heads and say, God, how? You know, then quite frankly, the judges should go back home and say, yes, we have done our job. Yes, we have delivered the judgment, but did we deliver justice? And where judgments don't achieve justice, then the judges themselves should cringe and ask themselves whether they are doing the work that they are meant to be doing, and whether we can, in all honesty, refer to them as Mr. Justice, so whatever it is, you know, and that's why their title is Mr. Justice, because you are expected to do justice. So our judgment is actually leading to the achievement of that objective of setting up the institution, which is to attain justice. If it is not, and people cannot sleep well just because you have given a final judgment which nobody can do anything about. Quite frankly, it leads to brigandage. It leads to a denigration of societal values as we currently know them. And it makes us a laughing stock.
I'm worried about it. I'm worried because is it not possible for a lawyer who has an interest to ask the Supreme Court to look into an appeal against his own judgment?
Yes, it is possible. You can bring up an appeal. You can bring, it is not really called an appeal. It is called a review. So you come and then you bring proceedings, either the same proceeding, or you bring it up in subsequent proceedings, that are tangential, that have some bearing on the earlier judgment that is perceived to be absurd or creating, clear injustice. And then you urge the panel. You beg them more like, because, a Supreme Court justice is actually, God on earth. Because whatever he says, if they say somebody is dead, the person is dead. If you appeal a murder trial for a murder verdict all the way to the Supreme Court, and the panel says, man, there's nowhere else to go, and that you should be hanged, that's it. There's nobody in the world, apart from maybe the president or the governor, who can, pardon you. You have to go for it. So that's the prism from which I expect judges to take their jobs and hold, and come up with verdicts. Because the judge is actually the representative of God on earth. And if you now go and start looking at other pecuniary considerations, or you succumb to other, you have the capacity to succumb to other influences in order to arrive at conclusions that will stand the test of time, then quite frankly you don't qualify to be a judge. And I think that's why the criteria for selection of judges should be so much more rigorous than what we find it today. Because if you look at it, cronyism has filtered into the selection process for judges. And I think that it is absurd in law, in my view, and in fact, for the appointment of judges to be subject to executive power. Because if the judges don't appoint the executive, and the executive is separate from the judiciary and the legislature, then why should the judges, and the executive doesn't appoint the legislature, but they are appointed directly by the people, then why would the executive have the prerogative of appointing who a judge should be? So I think constitutionally it is wrong, and it is an error that has been allowed to exist in our jurisprudence for too long, and we must come up with a more ingenious way of having the process throw up the very best that we have, in some way. In America, many of the judges get elected. You have to contest. I think that's also quite absurd, for people to be voting for who a judge should be and who should not be. But in America, anything goes. People carry guns, and shoot each other, and every time they're having memorial services, that's also a joke as well. You get the point? So the whole world is a mix of different challenges, but without challenges, then there is no excitement. So we have to have those difficult questions that we have to continuously interrogate and answer so that we can purify our society to make them better than they currently are. But I think the system we are running right now, where the president can decide to appoint judges from just one section of the country and nobody can ask him any questions because he's the president, or he's the governor or something, it's quite absurd.
Wonderful, there's something else I want to bring up in relation to this. There is a case at the Supreme Court in relation to Uche Nwosu, who ran for the governorship of Imo State on the ticket of AA. And the Supreme Court ruled that Uche Nwosu was the duly selected or nominated candidate of the All Progressive Congress. So he is their duly selected candidate. But that he committed political bigamy after collecting that ticket legitimately. He then went across to also collect the ticket of the AA party. And therefore got him, and then he was no longer the candidate of APC,
or the
nor
candidate of
that
the
of the AA, and that he got himself disqualified.
Yes.
But the Supreme Court ruling was that he was the legitimately nominated candidate of APC. The same Supreme Court ruled that Hope Uzodinma of the same APC was the duly elected governor of Imo State. If I'm then also going to do some reasoning, it means that Uche Nwosu was the duly nominated candidate, and Hope Uzodinma was the duly elected, both of them of APC. Can this be a judicial precedent?
Well, we live in a world of absurdities, and I don't think anybody, no matter how smart, could have analyzed it better. Because this actually, the way you have analyzed it, throws up the sheer, absurdity of that judgment. And I think even the judges who were on that panel should be cringing. And if you also remember, when they attempted to revisit that issue in a subsequent proceeding, the Supreme Court virtually scared lawyers from ever attempting to do such a thing by imposing fines on the lawyers in their personal capacity. There were outrageous, award of costs, against the lawyers personally. I remember that some top senior advocates who dared to raise such issues. People as prominent as Affe Babalola SAN and Wale Lanukwekun SAN, they were actually penalized personally. There were fines of, I think, 10 million naira, because I don't call it cost, those are actually fines. There were fines of 10 million naira awarded against each of them personally for daring to open their mouth to even dare mention the fact that, there could have been an error. I have never seen that happen in any judicial system anywhere else in the world, So clearly, to answer your question boldly, that cannot be relied on as precedent. You know what I mean? You cannot have somebody as the duly nominated candidate of a party, and another person comes in and becomes the duly elected candidate of that same party in
the same election.
In the same election. And then if you want to create the theater of absurdity further, you now say, okay, so how many votes did Uzodinma get? So if he's the one that was duly elected, he should have to stand up and say, the Imo people, I got 2,537,115 votes. Just to mention a figure, you get the point. He can never beat his chest and say these are the number of votes I scored. So if you won an election and you are governor, and sirens are following you about because the Supreme Court says so, not because anybody voted for you, there should be some feeling of emptiness around it. And I think that's what I think the man must feel, even within the confines of the government house, in Imo State. I would feel really embarrassed and ashamed to come from a state where the governor was imposed on us in that kind of situation.
Madaki, don't make me feel uncomfortable. I'm from Imo State.
Well, I don't know. I'm not talking. about. I'm from Benue State, and my own governor was not imposed, by the Supreme Court. And quite frankly, many people call him the Supreme Court governor of Imo State, and they are right, because there's no Imo man that can say I went to the polling station to vote for Hope Uzodinma. Well, he's the governor.
Well, this is the Signature Show on AIT. We take a break now, and when we return, we answer the next very tough question. Who really attempted to assassinate the Benue State Governor, Samuel Ortom? Stay with us.
This is SignatureTV.org. Breaking the news. Following the news. Analyzing the news. 247 round the clock. All on the go. SignatureTV.org. News in your pocket.
You are welcome back. Now, Madaki, this is happening right at the back of your house. The whole country was alarmed 2 weeks back when the Benue State Governor, Samuel Ortom, was attacked while he was inspecting his farm. The governor said that he had to run close to a kilometer, escaping from his attackers. The governor has also pointed at some group, he says, might have masterminded the attack. I have a bigger worry, and that is that the Fulani national movement, some people say faceless, others say, but that Fulani national movement did address a press conference last year when they were ordering some sections of the country to vacate the north. So they're not totally faceless. They released a statement saying that they were responsible for that attack and that wherever Ortom may run to, he may have escaped this time, that next time he may not escape. When he visited the president, the governor himself did say that since after the death of Ghana, and I'm quoting him, the stump of Ghana's gang was still creating security challenges and attacking in Benue State. First, how precarious do you think Nigeria's security challenge is for a governor to be attacked? That's issue number one. Issue number two, could it be true that there is a Fulani national movement targeting a Samuel Ortom?
Yeah, thank you very much once again. This is actually a very profound issue. And as you know, security issues require to be taken very seriously and treated very thoroughly. But we're in a country where people are never thorough, about most things, including security. So we trivialize things, maybe because of the denigration of the value of human life, in the country. Otherwise, this actually should be something that will be taken very seriously. It's an investigation which, in my view, should be handled by the IG himself personally, with them giving him moment-by-moment report, on what has transpired, and with the hope that we actually do get to unravel the truth of what happened, because issues of ethnicity are extremely sensitive in a multi-ethnic country and in a multi-ethnic and multi-religious country like Nigeria, where the slightest thing can trigger, conflagrations beyond human imagination. And if you have a government that is not hands-on, in dealing with such issues, as we sadly do have, you discover that when there's a conflagration, so many innocent lives would have been lost, before they will now start condemning and threatening to bring everybody to book. I've heard about that book several times, and I think those books are full now. You get the point. Every single time there's terrorism in this country and people get mowed down in cold blood, all you hear is a government official or some president or governor come to say that, the attacker shall be brought to book. I've not seen a single person brought to that book. And I think if it was a black book, it should be full. If it's a white book, it should be full. Because the number of people whose names should have been brought into that book, that imaginary book of, are very many. You get the point. Now, having said that, I think that whatever happened in Benue needs to be thoroughly investigated because, to the glory of God, the herdsmen attacks, on villages have gone down drastically due to the proactive effort of the incumbent governor in having the vision and the courage to ban open grazing, which is actually a very primitive culture, which is a very destructive, in fact, and even hazardous practice for the
herders themselves.
You get the point. Why will you be trekking the entire world just for your animals to feed? When you can keep them in a confined space and give them quality food, and they grow several times better than they will grow. If they are dissipating their energy, just roaming on the roads and you trekking and following them. That's such a primitive. If that's the way your ancestors did this business,
must you do it that way?
It can no longer be done that way. If we followed the pathway of our ancestors, we'll be riding camels today. We'll be riding, there won't be any cars, there won't be any aeroplanes. So why will you be entering an aircraft to go to London when you can actually trek or swim across the oceans? You know what I mean? Or use whatever means to go. You know what I mean? So we are in a theater of the absurd. And when I hear some of these their governors, from some parts of the country, seek to defend, this obvious absurdity because they say that's the practice of their ancestors. I think those people should be removed for just making those kind of irresponsible comments. You get the point? Because it's clearly irresponsible and it's clearly a demonstration of the extent of their daftness. They have to be daft to make such comments. You get the point? On things that are extremely sensitive and affects human life. You get the point? There are certain statements you don't make as a leader of a country. And when you have become a leader at any level, even if you are a local government chairman or a ward head or whatever, you come up and make some irresponsible statement, you should be handcuffed from where you are. And that's why I'm a strong advocate of the removal of this, crazy immunity clause in the Constitution. Anybody who commits a crime should just go face it. Because to be a governor is a job like any other job. Why do they even feel so cool about themselves, and they now assume that they are God once they make them governor? A governor is just a job like any other job, for God's sake, with clear job descriptions. But they never follow their job descriptions because, they are lords unto themselves. You get the point? Having said that, there could be two scenarios that will lead, just like the governor said, there could be two security scenarios that led to that attack. And until the attackers are caught and made to confess to their crimes, the situation will continue to unravel itself. But just like I mentioned, after the very serious profile given to the series of headers attacks, where they were decimating villages, one after the other in a systematic. In fact, it was so absurd in Benue that when they sacked a village, the headers would go and occupy the houses of those that they sacked. And I saw those ones with my own very eyes, where they would occupy a village and their cows would be all over the place. They would be sleeping on the beds of the people that they sent away from those villages. So it wasn't as if they were doing it, in a hidden manner. And this lasted for many, many months before they were eventually either begged or persuaded to leave the place for the original owners of those houses to live in them. That's the kind of scenario we faced around that time when 70 Benue sons and daughters were buried in one day, from attacks of herdsmen that some people were saying was sensationalized and that it was too sensitive to be shown on television. I think that's irresponsible. The world has to see what happened, the way it happened. And I praise Governor Ortom for upping the ante and bringing that mayhem, that genocide, to the attention of the world, the way he did. If he did nothing else, that courageous action, really set the scene for the end of that evil. If not everywhere else in the country, but at least in Benin, which is our own immediate space. So since then, the effrontery, the brazenness with which those attacks by Fulani herdsmen was taking place, was no longer happening. You get the point. So for a very long time, at least in the Agatu area, which is the Benue South area where I come from, we've almost completely forgotten about the issue of herdsmen coming to attack people in their sleep and killing them. And also in the Tiv area, all those Logo, Ukum areas where we used to have issues with herdsmen, doing lone wolf attacks, have also drastically reduced because you can't just be roaming. Most of the conflicts that lead to those mayhem and murder, by Fulani herdsmen happen when they allow their cattle to graze, and then there's a conflict, between the farmer whose crops have been eaten up by the cows, and then the herdsmen who think that their cows are entitled to do that, But with the proactive removal of livestock from grazing openly and destroying farms, that drastically reduced, the conflict that could lead to that. You get the point?
But Manaki, before we progress on that line, that's something I need you to bring in. I hope you don't mind. The Fulani National Movement has issued a statement claiming responsibility for the attack on the governor. What should the government be doing? Or is it just some mischief makers trying to, take advantage of the situation and claim, in quote, credit that doesn't belong to them?
Well, just like I mentioned earlier, security issues have to be taken very carefully and treated with the sensitivity it deserves. When a group claims responsibility, the credibility of that group also needs to be investigated. Do they exist? Are they a faceless organization? Do they actually have officials who can be captured, by security agents? That's for the DSS to unravel. And if the DSS director at national level and the state director, are up and doing with their jobs, that should actually be what should be paramount in their minds at the moment. Why do we treat FUNAM? Is FUNAM a registered organization? Is it an organization that has executives? But again, I would also not be surprised if that is the position, because the Mieti Allah, that is a recognized Fulani organization, has actually also claimed the responsibility for murders in this country and nothing came out of it. The secretary of Mieti Allah was recorded on television as claiming responsibility for some of those mayhem that took place in Benue, where people were killed. And then he said, yes, those killings were reprisal attacks for the stealing and the killing of their cows. And nothing happened to him, and the man is still alive and walking free in this country up until tomorrow. In a useful, sane country where law is enforced, such a man should be behind bars. Such a man should actually be passed through the judicial process for him to defend, that justification that he did on TV. But, we live in a country where some people are above the law, clearly.
Okay, lastly, because my director is also indicating that I'm running short of time, do you consider it a failing on the part of the governor's security details? And let me tell you why I'm asking that question. The governor is supposed to have 3 layers of security. Before the governor moves out, there ought to be a recce, an advance movement. Layer 1. As the governor goes, there are 2 accompanying him. One totally to protect his person, the other one to counter any attack should it arise. For a governor to have been exposed the way Ortom was exposed, wasn't it a kind of failure?
Well, clearly there were security failures. And, I've heard the reports about him saying he was out and running for his dear life for almost a kilometer. I'm trying to imagine that kind of scenario where the governor
could have happened.
Where the governor was supposed to have been in a bulletproof vehicle, and then you'll be exposed and you'll be dodging bullets. How did that happen? Again, the attack on Governor Ortom was not the first attack, on the governor. Governor Zulum of Borno State has been attacked severally but we know that that's Boko Haram. And in this country, it appears as if once a crime is committed by bandits or by Boko Haram, it is fine. Because these are lawless people, and we know that they are a problem. But these are also supposed to be citizens of this country who are committing crimes for which they must be brought to book. I feel sorry for Governor Zulum too, who has also had to dodge those kind of bullets several times, and a number of people in his convoy have been killed a number of times. But that has not deterred him from doing the honest and consistent job that he's doing in Borno State. I feel concerned for my own governor, because apart from being the governor of my state, he's also my friend. I've not met him one-on-one to discuss the details of this, and I plan to do that in the next few days. And I think that will also help us to unravel some of these situations. But clearly there were security failures. And I think were I the governor, if I get such close shave with death, on account of security failures, I will request a complete overhaul of my security architecture, because it doesn't make sense. First of all, I think that one of the areas that they must focus on is whether there aren't 50 columnists within his own security network that gives feedback to the criminals about the governor's movements. It's very easy for a criminal to phone a governor's security team and say, "Where are you guys headed?" And they will say, "We are going to the governor's farm." Otherwise, how would they even know where the governor is going to go and be waiting for him to ambush him? That's number one. Number two, they ought to monitor the telephones of the technology to monitor telephones of security agents. They ought to know who they are talking to, and who is talking to them? Which calls are they receiving? What did they discuss in the course of those calls and all that? That's what the proper security situation, network should do. And if this is not been normalized, this should actually become the norm, because whether we like it or not, we live in a country that is the second now most terrorized country in the world. We cannot trivialize it. We may have trivialized the value of human life here, because anybody can be mowed down and it's okay, and nothing comes out of it. After some time, the news just, it fizzles into the news as one of those things. You get the point? But every human life should matter. Then one last thing that I ought to also talk about is the Ghana issue. Ghana had become virtually a nuisance, security-wise in Benue over a long period of time. And then there was this issue of negotiated amnesty, and all of that. Whether amnesty is a good policy or not is actually extremely questionable, because, in a good country, I don't think criminals should be pardoned, just because they say they have repented. And we have been seeing so many repentant Boko Haram members, being given large sums of money and brought back and reintegrated into the system. And they have confessed, they have killed, they have slaughtered people in cold blood, raped women, kidnapped people, done heinous things, but because they say they are sorry, it's okay. Western societies survive and thrive because they never forgive a wrong. There is no way you can commit a crime in the Western society and you are captured and you say because you say you are sorry, you are forgiven. Go and sin no more. It's an approach to crime fighting that I find extremely novel, and I think it's only in Nigeria that is happening anywhere else. You get the point? But there are so many things that only happen in Nigeria. Only many things. For instance, running an oil and gas company at a loss. The national oil company has been running at a loss for more than a decade, and it's also fine.
But that's I've added that all together. Well, in the past 35 minutes or thereabout, I've been conversing with Madakiame. Madakiame is a lawyer. At the beginning I said, I'm not sure whether he has jumped into the middle of the ring of politics. I think I should have asked him that question, but that may be for another day, because if he begins to canvass his political positions, I'll give him a bail. Well, this conversation never ends. It continues next Sunday. My name is Mwabu Njoku. Good afternoon.